Get it in the morning.
Can you sing me the song?
Yep. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good day, mate.
Because I'm a 90s weirdo, you know?
Good morning and welcome to Home is Where the Van Is. My name is Jason and I'm your host, and I'm really excited that you've taken the time to come and listen to what we're putting together. I'd like to thank everybody who listened to last week's episode, the first one, who commented, who shared, and took the time to give us some feedback. So thank you very much. This is obviously episode 2, and apologies that it's coming out on Friday and not the Wednesday. Some of the drives this week have been quite long, and sleep has been at a premium. So we'll kick it off. We'll get straight into it. We hear from a couple of other guys from Hands Like Houses who share one of their more recent stories. Taylor from HANDGUNS gives his feedback on punk rock at the moment and also doing it tough on the road. And also a really exciting chat with the guys who host the peace protest that's been set up outside the White House in Washington, D.C. since the 70s. This week we've titled the episode Prison, Peace and Punk Rock. And as usual, first things first, this is Kev's house.
Kev's house! Yeah!
It's gonna be a serious one. Okay. I actually really like Chipotle, so I'm gonna give them the thumbs up. Hey, this is Kev's house. This is my review on Chipotle. Chipotle is a Mexican fast food restaurant similar to Subway. You can get tacos and burritos. It's really nice. It's refreshing. It's healthy, similar to Subway, but Mexican. Instead of shitting blood, as they quote on South Park, I'm going to be shitting pink clouds. Chipotle. Wait, 10 stars out of 10 bar. Yum. Yum yums.
Kev's house! Yeah! Hey, what's up? My name's Taylor, and I sing in a band called HANDGUNS.
Why handguns?
Because our guitarist at the time, no longer in the band, he's in a band called Common Thief now. He decided the name would be cool for like shirt prints because like you could stack the name HANDGUNS.
One scenario that made you go, I want out of this touring game?
I've been touring since 2009. Not saying that's oh my god, it's a long time, but I've been doing this for a while now, and like to see how it's evolved into what it is, I'm not too proud of what it's become. Sometimes like I feel like, okay, I've quit this band before.
Yeah.
Just because, and granted, I wasn't even 21 years old yet when that happened. And like, I have really bad anxiety. I question myself all the time, so it's like, oh fuck, am I doing this right? But that hasn't been a question since I've quit.
Yeah.
So like, I have left the band, but you know, some shit that kind of like bums me out in the scene these days is just like so many politics and cliques involved. Like, you know, it's like being in a punk band wasn't never about like fitting in, but like now these days it's like, oh, you gotta fit in with this crowd to get a good fucking tour. Like fuck that, I don't care if that's what it takes to get like a good tour to play in front of a bunch of people. Like I don't want any part of it, and it's, you know, that's not the foundation that this band was built on. It will never be rebuilt like that. With this past year, just seeing how everything like plays out, like there's just certain shit that you can just tell, like it's like everyone's kissing everyone's asses, and we're not the band to kiss people's asses, and it bums me out. So like our new record lyrically is kind of like about that shit, kind of not, loosely based off like the whole idea of just being fucking jaded and disenchanted with everything. So, you know, lyrically I'm a very nostalgic person too. I like to write, on the new record there's a song about just like nostalgia, as fucking pretentious as that sounds, but I really like, I really try to challenge myself lyrically and to not write about relationships.
Yeah.
Whether it be and I'm not saying I've never written songs about relationships, but I like to write about other shit and think outside of the box. Like, don't get me wrong, I love New Found Glory, I love Blink-182. Like, my thing is, like, I don't like, oh, cool, this is a sick melody, let's just write random lyrics for it to fit. Like, no, like, because I'm standing on stage, I have a microphone, there's a reason I have a microphone, and that's for me to say what I want to say and how I'm feeling. So, my overall message with that is just to, you know, be honest with your shit. Just stop being so trapped in a bubble and thinking about what other people are going to think, because that's bullshit. And if you're singing in a band, like I just said, you have the microphone, say what the fuck you're feeling, and you will feel 1,000 times better, you know? I know I keep coming off as a pretentious fuck, and I'm really trying not to, but like, and there's a lot of bands I love, and I think they write great songs, but there's a reason they write those songs. Like, I've never been like, I've never sat there and been like, oh my god, I wish I wrote that song. It's like, no, there's a reason that band wrote that song, and that's their song. I do love one of my favorite songs of all time is Long December by Counting Crows.
Okay.
People that listen to our band probably know this already. I love Ryan Adams, dude. He makes me as miserable as he makes me. I love it. I fucking love it. Detroit, I've slept in a parking lot there. I've had rats crawl over me while we were following Warped Tour and selling CDs and shit. New Orleans, New Orleans isn't really sketchy. Like, we do the Bourbon Street thing every time we go there just for shits and giggles, you know. And I mean, we get a little out of control. Like, it's bad. We have some stories from Bourbon Street. Our merch guy at the time was so, on Bourbon Street, usually you gotta, if you want to use the restroom in any bar or restaurant, you gotta pay, because that's...
Do you gotta buy a drink, or you just gotta...
Buy a drink, buy whatever, you know, you don't have to, like, pay to use a bathroom, but... So anyway, merch guy pays and uses the bathroom, or he buys, like, a slice of pizza or something, and, next thing you know, like... Where was I at? Yeah, sorry, I have ADD. So he buys the...
Where am I? What am I doing? Who are you?
Yeah. Who am I? So he buys the slice of pizza, gets to use the bathroom, and then he gives him the wrong change back. Next thing you know, he's like screaming, like, God, made my fucking money back. And I see the dude at the counter jump over the fucking counter and just start swinging at him with a baseball bat. And like, it was St. Patty's Day too in Australia, or not Australia. On Bourbon Street.
We do St. Patrick's Day pretty well.
Yeah. That shit was insane. Like, that's something I will not forget, ever. When this band first started, I joined it in 2009. I did a 2-week tour, and this was straight out of high school. I've been touring since I had no graduation plans. When my mom or my dad asked me, like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to tour in a band. I'm thankful as hell that I'm here.
2015.
Yeah. So,
Atlanta, Georgia, here we are.
2010, our guitarist at the time booked a whole full U.S. tour. Fucking first full U.S. tour. And I tell the story to a lot of people. And so, you know, our eyes are wide and everything. Like, we had shows booked down the east to out west. The West Coast states started in Walla Walla, Washington. So
Is that the name of the place, Walla Walla?
Yeah, it's not the name of the venue, but it's the name of the city. Walla Walla, Washington. And so yeah, like I said, our eyes are wide, and we're like, yeah, dude, like first full US tour, let's fucking make this shit happen. So we managed to get all the way out west, thank God. We had a booking agent lie to us and be like, yeah, you know, I booked 14 shows like down the coast and everything, and we're like, sick, like this is gonna be fucking awesome, like cool, we can't wait to play. And so turns out we play the show in Walla Walla, Washington, and the next thing you know, the next day the money goes missing. And then we ask the booking agent who booked us 14 shows down the coast, hey, what's going on with these shows? Oh, they all fell through. Sick. So we managed to get a hold of Soupy from the Wonder Years at the time, and this was like right when the Upsides came out, and they were on tour with Man Overboard and Therefore I Am. And Soupy, being the nice guy he is, he's like, yo, like, if you can make it down to, Palms Desert, Arizona, like, can hook you up with these 3 shows to get you where you need to go. So we panhandled down the whole coast. Like, we had no money. We panhandled down Hollywood Boulevard. We had to steal from Walmart a bunch. At the time, our band was like notorious for stealing from Walmart. Like, it was insane. And we managed to get there and everything. And like, it was just a whole experience. Like, coming home after that and being like, holy shit, like, we made it out alive. None of us called our parents. Like, we weren't freaking out. We were just happy to like not be working shitty fucking jobs and doing what we love to do. So that's the story I have.
And so you made it to those shows with the Weather Years. Mm-hmm. And that got you back across back home.
And I mean, we met people along the way, like, and so, I mean, they remain friends till these days, like very, very good friends. And it's really cool, like something like that, like you can make lifelong friends out of a shitty situation. So
that's what punk rock's all about.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Thanks for chatting.
Hell yeah, dude. Fuck yeah.
Okay, my name is Phillipos Malacabello. I am across the street from the White House in Washington, D.C. I am the volunteer coordinator when we do have volunteers for the William Thomas Memorial Peace Vigil. We're a protest for world peace and against nuclear and atomic weapons. We have been around before 24 hours a day, which is what we are now, from January of 78 through January of 1981. It was a protest across the street on the White House side of the street. It was from 9 a.m. till 11 p.m., at which point we had to take down. But at that time, it was only using picket signs. Now I have 2 large wooden post boards on both sides of a plastic-made tent. Now it is 24-hour-day protest. We can only be removed for abandoning or becoming violent in the protest, and we keep on protesting for world peace, anti-nuclear. We also take on some human rights violations and some green technology issues. So it has survived 17 blizzards, 24 hurricanes, 2 tornadoes. I've been here through 13 of the blizzards, 20 of the hurricanes, and both of the tornadoes. By all logic, being in just a piece of plastic tent, I shouldn't be alive. But whether you call it karma, whether you call it nature, or whether you call it God, I'm here. I'm surviving through what no one should be able to be alive through. 2 tornadoes, 20 hurricanes, and 13 blizzards. I shouldn't be alive. But I'm protesting for world peace. I'm not protesting for something wrong or something evil. I was telling you the story of the 26 groups that were protesting out here. And as you look up and you look down and you look in the street, you see that there's one solid and one solo protest across here in front of the White House in Washington, D.C. And that's the William Thomas Memorial Peace Vigil. So we continue, and nobody is volunteering time, if they ever do come, and volunteering to relieve me. They're volunteering to do hours at the William Thomas Memorial Peace Vigil. Yeah. I will never take it and say, it's my vigil. My father knew him in the 60s. He saw the apathy that was happening in America and people wanting to say, okay, we've done enough in the peace movement. I say when we've achieved world peace is when we've done enough in the peace movement.
What do you define as world peace?
I define world peace as a state that man doesn't want to invade a nation that has never attacked them. With no nation invading a nation that's never attacked them, then no nation will ever have to perform self-defense. I will always agree that any nation attacked has the perfect right to self-defense. So I don't consider the nation defending itself from an initial attack ever the aggressor, because that would be an oxymoron. You can't be the aggressor and be the one that's been attacked. So I say that every citizen of any nation who pays taxes has a reasonable expectation that their taxes would mean that they would get defended from an attack from another nation. Myself, as an American citizen, as a civilian, I would hate any U.S. civilian, any U.S. resident to be killed by an invasion by another country on our domestic soil or on one of our territories. Since I'm not a hypocrite, I believe that every civilian from any nation has the right to not be killed by any nation's military. War is a military action. It's not supposed to be military on civilian. It's supposed to be military against military. If a military attacks you, you go after their military. You don't go after their civilian population. So even though in Hawaii, in Pearl Harbor, Japan did attack Pearl Harbor was not a state. It wasn't a state for the next 18 years. It was not a territory of the United States, but we had military outposts there. That's where a lot of people say, no, it was a territory. No, it wasn't. Cuba, we have a military prison. It's called Guantanamo Bay.
Yep.
However, Cuba is not a territory of the United States. And every U.S. citizen will agree that Cuba is not a territory of the United States. That's how Hawaii was. It wasn't a territory of the United States, but we have military outposts there. They attacked a military outpost. At that point, as I said, I believe in self-defense. I would have had no problem with the United States going after even the very last Japanese military soldier, including all the way up to Emperor Hirohito, who commanded that they attack. But my problem is that 238,000 Japanese civilians were killed within a 48-hour period in the attacks in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. That's a huge loss on a civilian population of a nation. No civilian anywhere on this planet is powerful enough to launch their nation's military into war. Only the top politicians in any country can do that. There's some militarized nations that the top people in the military can do that, but they're still not the civilians. Keep your hands off the friggin' civilians. It's not a civilian action, it's a military action.
And that kind of sums up the whole premise, I suppose, is army against army, military against military, but when it comes to civilians, that's
hands
the people
off.
who are doing their day-to-day business, leaving their taxes and their responsibilities through whatever process to the people to make those decisions.
Right. Now, we had a president, Dwight D. Eisenhower, a president before John F. Kennedy. He had been military. He was an enlisted man. He proved himself, became general. He ended up being president of the United States, commander-in-chief of the U.S. military. And his last speech before the American people, he spoke out on the military-industrial complex, speaking on how the budget of the military would eventually take the funding away from the students' education program and the senior citizens' budgets. Well, from 1945, from the end of World War II through 1979, the United States stayed number one in public education at the time of high school graduation. In 1980, we dropped to number 2. I don't consider the top 5 bad at all.
Yeah.
1984, the year that Ronald Reagan needed to perform good for re-election, the United States did finish in the top 10. It was the last year the United States finished in the top 10 in public education at the time of high school graduation. The last 5 years, the United States has finished 22, 27, 17, 29, and 23 in the world in public education at the time of high school graduation. So indeed, Dwight D. Eisenhower, not immediately, but was correct, that the military-industrial complex and the budget thereof shall eventually take the funding away from public education and the senior programs. the senior programs in the United States at the time that he made that speech, and currently our seniors are not getting everything that they were promised. As they paid their money into the program and were promised that things were going to be there for them when they became seniors, maybe 60% of all the things that they were promised were there once they became seniors for our recent group of seniors that are 70 and younger. So we keep on selling out our programs and our guarantees. Even I am not against our military, because I do want them to be there for my self-defense. So when our military is promised in their GI Bill that they're going to get $50,000 for their education, they're going to get home loans at 0.9%, and they're going to get their medical insured for everything that happened during their military service for the rest of their life. They get out, they become veterans, and find out that now they're going to give them psychiatric evaluations. Well, if you put people in a position where they're going to get bombed at and that they have to kill civilians, and they might not pass a psychiatric evaluation. There's something called post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and they'll get evaluated with that, which they definitely got from serving in the military. And then they'll say, and now you don't qualify for the education, and now we can't trust you with a 30-year loan, even at only 0.9% interest, because you don't qualify for that. Oh, you're complaining about that? We'll get back to you. 3 years later, they call that veteran's home, and the leading demographic of people in the United States, percentage-wise, that commit suicide is military veteran.
To change the tact of the conversation a touch, has anyone from this particular tent throughout the years had a appearance or a conversation with the president at the time?
That's one that I'm always asked, and I understand the reason for national security. I have to give you an answer of no comment. I'm sorry, but you know.
No, that's a fair answer. It's
self-preservation.
Because I would assume that you would get to know the security guards who are working, the police who walk the streets, and become friendly, I would suppose. They would converse every day, particularly being 3 a.m. on a Wednesday morning and there's no one else to chat to. How would, in your conversations with public servants, what's the general feel? Is there positive conversations and there negative conversations?
A lot of positive conversations. Our veterans love me. They know that I want them to get everything that they're promised in the GI Bill. They know that I'm not against them. They know that I believe in their existence for the sake of self-defense. They tell me themselves that they believed that when they signed up that they were going to be defending U.S. interests throughout the world, and then they find out that they're being sent to fight in this war, that war, and that war that have nothing at all to do with one single person in the United States of America, that they're sent to deliver this much military supplies to a nation on many, many airplanes filled with military industrial product. And it has nothing to do with defending the United States of America. Some of them have complained that, wow, we're sending these billions of dollars to first world nations for their budget, and we say that we're the leading proponent of peace throughout the planet, the official word from our government of the United States of America, when we're the leading proponent of making sure that people have money in their military budget to keep on buying military product from the United States. The two things that I'll say about the United States that they're number one in is the quality of their military product. The United States is number one.
Yep.
I don't think that's something to be proud of. But it is done, and it is what it is. Number two, the thing that the United States is number one is percentage of U.S. residents incarcerated is number one on the planet Earth, according to incarceration rates based on population to percentage that are incarcerated. Can't say education. I've already explained to you.
Yep.
It's been since '84 since we finished in the top 10. Mexico last year finished number 12 in math. The United States 32. So when some people say they're coming to the United States for an education, you know, the honest truth, you come in here for a financial opportunity, and there's nothing wrong with saying that. It's the honest answer, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's not for an education. If it's for an education, you would find somehow to make it to Denmark, Holland, Australia, or Germany. You know, you'd find somehow to make it there, you know, and Sweden. But usually it's those countries. Norway usually finishes in the top 10. Notice a lot of countries where you can go and get free college also tend to honor education a little higher. The United States, where if we stopped nation invading and did concentrate our military only being on self-defense, then some of that money would get loosed up, and maybe we could afford to pay our teachers better and have better early childhood education so that we could maybe get back in the top 10 in education in the world. I do highly respect the education systems in the countries that I've already mentioned.
I was going to say, sitting as part of the peace protest, education is one of the biggest themes that you've spoken about.
Right.
What would you? I'm going to have to wrap it up in a minute. What were you doing before you took this post?
Okay. I worked for.
I've got one more question, then we'll wrap it up.
I worked for the former king of Ethiopia. I went to 38 countries, investigated human rights violations. I did reports on 41 nations on the lingering effects of war. So the person sitting across the street that's anti-war has done reports on war and the effects of war 20 years and 10 and 20 years after the wars was over, and saw that they were still completely devastated countries.
You know, just someone who's sat on the internet and read through YouTube comments and read Wikipedia pages, someone who's actually gone and visited these places and written reports and spoken to people who have been there and orchestrated these things.
I'm one of them.
Yep.
I'm one of them. So I'm not somebody that sits across the street from the White House with no world experience. I traveled, William Thomas, who started this vigil, he traveled from Egypt across northern Egypt, so from east to west Africa. I started at Egypt and went through Sudan, Eritrea, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya. I went to Tanzania, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and South Africa. So I went north to south. He went to Israel once, I went to Israel twice. And then the many European countries that we've been through, the North, South American, Caribbean nations we've been to. So we're not ones here protesting without the experience of having seen the effects on the people on the ground in many nations. We do know the effects. We knew the psychological trauma. Also being in Washington, D.C., you get the people from those nations because everybody's embassy and consulate is in Washington, D.C., and usually when they come to do something with their embassy and consulate, they have a few days in town and they might take a little trip to the White House. Just yesterday, there was North Korea, the communist leader was inside speaking with President Barack Obama, while the South Korean Democratic people were out here protesting that he would be inside visiting with the communist leader. Now, there were people from the 48 continuous states, Canada and Korea, that had come out, and I posted it online. I posted first the video yesterday, and then today's newspaper I posted the photo in the newspaper of President Barack Obama meeting with the communist leader And when I posted yesterday the video of the Democrat supporters from Korea, people thought that I was posting something that wasn't factual. This morning when I posted in the newspaper of Barack Obama meeting with the communist leader, that's when I got some positive replies. At first I was a sellout, but you see, I know what I'm doing. And he was indeed meeting with the communist leader. He won't meet as readily with other politicians from the United States of America. But if it's a communist leader, he's willing to, quickly, on the double. He's willing to bow before leaders of other nations. He's very willing to do things that are very anti what the United States is about. I'm not anti-Democrat. I'm not anti-Republican. I'm not pro-Democrat. I'm not pro-Republican. I'm pro them listening to their constituents.
Yep.
And as a president, your constituents is every single last. I'm not anti-immigration situations, but people that are legally in the United States paying their taxes, that's their constituents. That doesn't mean only citizens. If you're paying your taxes,
you're contributing to the country.
right? So they're constituents too. And then our Congress, they all represent a state.
Mm-hmm.
So their constituents are the ones specifically in their state.
And that process, the step down process of that.
Right. So
Probably one final question. What is your most memorable story of your time here, whether it's a positive story or a negative story? Just to wrap it up, the whole podcast is about people's stories as we travel around. And obviously you've got a great story, as we've discussed, and sitting outside one of the most iconic houses of Parliament, houses of power in the world. What's one of your most memorable stories, whether from this particular spot where we're both sitting or during your time of traveling around, as you mentioned before?
okay, I'll give you the funniest one. A guy comes down. It's the what I call the last call stumblers, after the bars have said last drinks, and he comes and he walks up and he's about 50 feet right of center of the White House on the north side, and he drops his trench coat, and the guy is buck naked. He scales the fence, and the first thing landing on the other side, he twists his ankle, and it is the easiest arrest I've ever seen made out here. The guy on this side threw the trench coat over, the guy on this side covered him, helped him to the exit gates, but it took him so slow to limp over there that it gave an ambulance enough time to come and get him.
That would have been a bit of a laugh at that time of morning.
Right, it was. And then the other one was, okay, for some reason the newspapers announced that Barack Obama's airplane was going to be leaving at 7:10. It left 10 minutes early at 7. At 7 o'clock it was supposed to be leaving. At 7:10 it finally left. So by protocol, the snipers stay on the roof for half an hour after the presidential helicopter leaves, in case maybe it has to make a round trip to turn back. At 7:18, 8 minutes after the presidential helicopter, Marine One had pulled off, one person emerges from about the 250 people that had gathered out here to take a photo of the presidential helicopter leaving. Goes over the fence, jumps the fence. The Secret Service were in groups talking to each other instead of walking amongst the crowd to see if they saw anybody suspicious. When I saw him reach for the top of the fence, put his foot on the 15-inch brick area in front of the White House, I had adrenaline flowing. I screamed, "There's a jumper!" At which time, then they finally noticed that there was a jumper. The guy jumped over. I didn't know yet, had served 2 tours in Iraq He landed perfectly on his feet. He started running, and as I said, about the snipers on the roof, one of them ran right in front of the flagpole and pointed his M16 and said, "Stop." At that point, the guy started zigzagging, like you would be trained in the military if something's above, like helicopter. You zigzag. The dogs weren't released at all. When he got to the right side of the shrubs, he stopped running zigzag, made a straight line to the front door, and to my surprise, opened the doorknob and walked into the White House, the residence of the President of the United States of America. And then they tried to tell the story as the official story from the White House that they had tackled him 2 steps into the White House. But within 7 minutes, I was up to 8th Street, and I was getting interviewed by Sao Paulo News from Brazil, Tempo Latino, Telemundo, Hispanic television, Washington Post, Washington Times, Washington City Paper, ABC, NBC, BBC, and the next morning Fox News came out here. And I told them what happened, and 6 days later, the report from the United States Department of Justice, who reviewed the hard drive evidence of what happened inside, said he had touched 8 interior doorknobs, and a female Secret Service agent that had stayed to make sure the president's helicopter left properly had changed into her civilian clothing, and she's the one that took down the man that entered the White House. He had a weapon, he had a knife. And I told that. I put a little more into it. It took about 7 minutes what I said, and most of these news agencies only used about 15 seconds of what I said because they still believed the government of the United States of America that he had been tackled 2 steps into the White House, which is bullocks. He had touched 8 interior doorknobs. You can't do that within 2 steps into the White House. Yeah. So, peace be with you, brother.
Well, for those who haven't been here before, where would they keep track of information? Is there a Facebook page or a website that we can put a link to that you can follow along with at home?
Yeah, they can join a Facebook group. It's called Anarchistic Youth Brigade, and then in brackets, Punk Rock Revisited. And on there I give approximately every week, but if things spring up quicker than that, I will post Washington, D.C. Peace Vigil updates, and I'll give the date of those updates. I'll also put in relevant stories on political movements that are happening throughout the planet, human rights violations, animal rights violations, and things that I believe are interesting within the world of politics. There's also a lot of punk rockers putting up their favorite punk rock pages.
As I'm traveling around with a punk rock band, I think that's also really relevant. So,
well, I was the lead singer of the band, the Anarchistic Youth Brigade, that actually we formed. 2 of us formed as a band called the Dildos when we were 13.
That's a great name.
As the time that the New York Dolls broke up, and we decided that we still needed a band with sexual connotation. And then in late 76, we became Too Much Junkie Business, and in July of 77, we became the Anarchistic Youth Brigade.
I feel like if I had more time, then we can start talking about punk rock as well. But unfortunately, we're going to hit the road again. Thanks for taking the time to have a chat with us, and hopefully see you next time I pass back through Washington, D.C.
Wonderful, and I just want to say the name of 5. Are you from Great Britain?
From Australia.
You're from Australia? Oh, I was going to say bands from Great Britain. From Australia, the Saints.
Yep.
Let's see, Radio Birdman, and I can't remember the one more band that was an awesome band, but also that Australia had a punk rock scene in the late 60s. The United States had the MC5, the Sonics, the Fugs, the Psychedelic Stooges, which became Iggy and the Stooges, the Velvet Underground, and on both continents, North America and Australia. We both had punk scenes 10 years before the Sex Pistols in England. So the people of Australia, when we're talking about punk rock, you guys were right there, right at the beginning with the United States and with the one forgotten band that's usually forgotten in the conversation, Los SYCOS, the Peru, South America. In 1963, the SYCOS were together as a band. So just a little bit on the punk rock thing.
In a way we're all connected, threaded together. In a way we're all suspended, bound going nowhere.
My name is Cooper.
And my name is Joel.
So, we were talking earlier this evening about experiences. Jace, you spoke of some Floridian experiences that didn't really sort of live up to the hype that we were led to believe with living or experiencing Florida. Anyway, so a few nights ago, we played a show, and it was in St. Petersburg, Florida. It was by the beach, mad venue.
Beautiful location.
It was good. There's a beach side. You could see the water crashing up on the side of the venue. Stages were all closed. It was a good show. Leading up to the show, we remembered 2 years prior to the show, we had an experience with Joel's brother DT.
Yep. So
Yeah.
it was the same venue, the same location. It was a very memorable day for me, especially. We'd got to, I think maybe bus call that night was possibly 2 a.m. what it was this year, or I don't know, could be wrong, but we'd all been out drinking, we'd had a night, we're with the Tonight Alive guys.
Bus call at 2 a.m. means that the festival's going to end at about 7, 8. You got barbecue at 9:30.
So you've got time.
You've got time
to
to
have
have
a
your
night,
beers.
hang out with some friends.
And in that venue, the city, downtown, there's a bunch of clubs and bars right next to the venue. So you got to keep that in mind within the vicinity of Warped Tour.
Yeah, so we're in St. Petersburg. We go out, have a good night. Everyone gets a little bit drunk and kind of, does their own thing. And we come back, and it's about 5 minutes before bus call, and my brother's the only one that hasn't made it back yet. And so we're like, what's going on? And I was talking to our driver, and I was like, what are we going to do? Got to 2 o'clock, and he wasn't there. And he's like, we have
crashing on the floor in the bandwagon.
Yeah, he's
we
been
had
sleeping
4
on the
others, four mates, four mates, just hanging out on the couches and on the floors of the bandwagon, and DT was one of those mates that was helping out, selling CDs and being a legend.
Yeah, so we got to bus call, and our driver was like, look, I can wait maybe another 10-15 minutes, but as soon as the bandwagon start moving, we have to leave because we're stuck, we can't hold up traffic, we've got to go. And so I was like, I tried to call him, his phone was off, so it got to 10 past 2 or whatever it was, and we took off, and I'm sitting there pretty drunk trying to figure out what's going to go on because we've just left my brother in Florida in St. Pete's, and we're driving to a venue that's 4 hours away. So I stayed up all night trying to call him, message him, Facebook him, did anything I could trying to figure out, looked up flights, looked up buses, looked up hiring cars, looked up everything I could think of. And then in the morning, I stayed up all night, literally couldn't sleep. He calls me at 6:30, and I'm like, hello, Danny. And he's like, dude, I fucked up. First thing he says, I was so tired. I was like, yeah, dude, I know, what's happening? Where are you? And he's like, I lost my wallet. I was like, shit. So instantly that cancels out flights, hiring cars, hiring anything. Yeah. So somehow I managed to talk to my driver when we'd parked after thinking about it for longer. And
4 hours.
4 hours away. And our driver happened to know people, 3 girls that were driving to Warped Tour that day from St. Pete's. So somehow the next morning I woke up and their driver had organised these people, but then his phone had died, so he couldn't give them location, so it was a rough point, and they were trying to meet him.
They were trying to meet some Aussie just roaming the streets. It was
that day in Warped Tour, there was storms, there was flood, it was cancelled, it was back on, it was just a chaotic day. So we thought St. Pete's had a bit of a curse. And then that takes us to 2000.
So this was 2 years ago.
So this was 2 years ago, and now we're flashing forward to 2015. We're in St. Pete's. We're at the beach, and the show has finished, and they've gone out for beers, and Coops takes over from here.
Yeah, so we're walking out for beers. I was going to have an easy night. I was pretty wrapped up. We had a few heavy days of just humid heat. But we walked past the bars, AC/DC cover band. I hate AC/DC, but the band was pretty mad, and the crowd was pretty epic, so Me, Jimmy, Shuey, Alex headed to the after party bar. It was alright, I had a beer because Yingling was finally available.
What was available?
Yingling, the greatest beer that you can have in America, the oldest brewery of America, and the only beer worth drinking over in America. Anyway, after that, we were like, alright, gonna have a feed. We got a bunch of hot chippies with some deliciousness on top. The other guys had some pretty bad kebabs. And then they were like, alright, let's Uber. And I was like, nah, I'm gonna walk home, listen to some tunes, walk along the beach side, get to the bandwagon. Still had an hour and a half to bus call. And I was like, sweet. So I walked out. I was by myself. We weren't far. It was like a 15-minute walk. And excuse me. So I was on my maps, just making sure I was heading in the right direction. And it was July 3rd, so that night it was Independence Day after midnight, and it was the first Friday of that month, which meant it was another party night of something. Anyway, there was like literally thousands of people out in the streets. Footpaths are just full of people trying to get into bars and clubs. So I was walking on the gutter, just on my way, looking at my phone and maps, and I got like tackled and smashed into this car and handcuffed. And I was like, what is going on? And this cop was yelling at me saying, I just yelled at you 3 times to get off the road, you're diverting traffic. And I was literally in a gutter. He'd smacked me into the car that was a cop car that had blocked off the lane. I wasn't in nowhere in any shape or form doing anything bad. I was just walking in a gutter. He was yelling at me. Anyway, he handcuffed me and put me in the back of the paddy wagon, and then put this. I waited there for about half an hour in the back of the paddy wagon. No one had seen me because the other guys Ubered. And I was just sitting there, and then they arrested this other guy, and his family was there. It was really, really weird. They put him in the same side of the paddy wagon as me. There was a separate side that they could have put him. It would have separated us, but put us in the same place. They were sitting down in this wall in front of me. And then they drove us. It would have been like a 30 to 40 minute drive, just in the back of this paddy wagon with this guy handcuffed and just trying to like fathom what had just happened. And this guy was like staring at me going, I'm going to end you, I'm going to end you. And I was just like, could not be more like quintessentially that American stereotypical movie of being in the back of the paddy wagon. Anyway, so I just stared at this wall, and then the guy was like, I need to be the first one out. And like, you couldn't pass each other sitting down on this chair staring at this wall because it divided you. You had to sit down. There was no movement. You had to be crouched the entire time. And so he was trying to shuffle past me to be closer to the door when we got to the jail. And it was just like, it was the weirdest. Anyway, really past that experience, he was being so weird and strange. And so I just sat in the corner, staring at this wall. We drove for 40 minutes, had no idea what was going on. We got into this first cell, and you had to walk through. They took my shirt and my hat and I was wearing a sweet cowboy hat. It was a sweet hat. And they took all that, my wallet and my mobile. And then I had to wear like the yellow, like the classic jump shit shirt, because I only had a singlet on underneath. And so they put this shirt on. I had to have those like what is the photo called? The mugshots, yeah. And from that angle, and like they showed it to you, and it was like, you can't not look like a creepo in those photos. It's impossible. And they printed this on this ID, and they gave it to me.
Did you get a copy of your...
No, well, but I was thinking about it the other day, because people get mug shots and they show up on the internet, so surely it's probably on somewhere.
Have you seen the newspapers with all people's mugshot in them? You can get at a gas station. Maybe we need to find your...
It'd be on somewhere. I'll search it. It's not good though. I look like a major creep. Anyway, so I was in this cell with a couple of people, very interesting people. Our whole family had been arrested that evening. Husband, wife, and their 2 twin children that I think were about 15 or 16. Now I was sitting in there, and there's 2 other guys that were of a questionable state of mind. Anyway, after an hour, they got me back, took my cell phone, and now we're like, do you need any numbers from your cell phone to contact while you're here, for people to know that you're here? And I was like, yes, I desperately need to contact someone to let them know that I'm here. And they're like, okay, go into the next room. So I went into the next room, and it was this big cell with 50 to 100 chairs and a few rooms off the side. They did first aid checkups and everything on everyone. And then they were like, alright, there was phones there as well, and I was like, alright, I need to use those phones to contact. I went up to the desk and I was like, hey, I need those numbers for my cell phone. And they were like, yeah, you're supposed to do that in the room prior. And I was like, yeah, I was in that room, and they asked me, and I said, yes, I need numbers for my cell. And then they ushered me to this room, and now I'm here. And they were like, well, you were supposed to get the numbers from that room. It's too late now, it's in the back of the safe. Take your seat. And I was like, oh man, I don't know anyone's cell phone over here. We all have American numbers. It's new to everyone. I don't even know, we couldn't contact other countries or anything. And so I was sitting there, racking my mind. I was watching the bus call tick over, knowing that the guys are going to be freaking out, oh, is he dead? Is he passed out? Or something like that. And I was going through the white pages looking for numbers to be literally just call up on their phone and be like, hey, you don't know me, I don't know you, good guy, I need you to send an email or something. Anyway, so I ended up making friends with the guy in the cell, being and he had been caught earlier that night he had a jar of weed in his girlfriend's handbag and put in for bail of $5,000. And everyone in there had a bail of $5,000 to $10,000. And my bail was $100. And then I realized they gave me these papers, and I read through them, and I could pay my own bail being in there, or to wait to the judge in 6 to 8 hours. And I was like, oh, I can't wait 8 hours for the judge. So I paid bail, and I had to call this number, call this guy that had my visa number from my wallet, and then cigarettes. Anyway, and they, so I paid my bail. It was $100, and then I had to sit there for another 4 to 6 hours. Made friends with this guy, the guy that had his weed in his girlfriend's bag, and he was getting out a few hours prior to me. And he was gonna email the band email to let the guys know what was happening. But on his way out, luckily Cam, our TM, had at that point, it was about 6 in the morning. When did you call jails?
I started calling jails at 3:45 a.m. After 3:45 a.m., I called hospitals. I ended up calling not the county jail, but I called the police department. The police department actually forwarded me the email to the county jail, so they actually called the county jail, and I asked if that Matthew Cooper was there, and then they asked me if he was 25 years old, and I said yes. And they started searching, and I asked, is he Australian? And they said yes. And I was like, that's my guy. So I ended up writing down the address. Our driver had fallen asleep by that point, or was watching a movie or something, and I ran to the window. I knocked on it like bloody hell and screamed at him, I got him, he's in jail. We ended up getting there. It was about 25 minutes away. We got there at 4:30 a.m. I was wearing girl camo shorts that I bought at Walmart, and a cut-off t-shirt with my nipples showing. And I've never been to a jail before, so I started walking down the line, and then all of a sudden I'm in this caged area, and I have ex-convicts walking past me, and I'm just walking through, and then I get to one part, and I show my ID. I give it to him, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, I guess my friend's in jail. I walk through, I start talking to this guy at the reception desk, and I'm like, hey, my friend's here, I'm here to pick him up.
thinking that it'd take a few minutes and then he'd be out. I was very mistaken. He tells me to sit down. I wait for 45 minutes, texting my driver about everything that's going on, and then I kind of think, okay, I should get some more information. So I talk to him. I'm like, so how long is this going to take? He says, well, it could take 2 to 8 hours. Oh, it's 5:30 a.m. and we should have left 3 hours ago. So he gives me a hotline number to call to see the progress on how Matthew Cooper's case is going. I find out that he's paid his bond and that it's going to take a couple hours. So my driver waited with me until 8:30 a.m. But prior to that, a man came out and saw me and our driver saying, hey, are you at the festival? And we're like, yeah, totally, we're at the festival. He's like, oh,
wearing your cut-off shirt with showing in booty shorts.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, yeah, we're totally with the festival. He's like, yeah, well, your guy's in there. I'm like, yeah, that's why we're here. And he shows me this note with the band's email on it and a little note that's saying, hey guys, I'm in jail. I'm figuring out how to get there. I'll contact you soon, I think it was.
Do
or
you
something.
have that note still?
No, the guy kept it. And he's like, yeah, I was going to drive him to the Greyhound station. I'm like, it's okay. Does he know that we're here? And I'm like, he said no. I was like, okay, cool. So we waited another half an hour. I had to poo so bad. But I wouldn't do it until I saw Coops because I wanted to see his face. I wanted to see that glimpse of hope and happiness in his face, to see that we were actually there to pick him up and I had found him. Well, I went poop anyways. Given I had enough time, and we sat down again, and then I saw that door open, and he walked out. And I remember the first words, I am so happy to see you guys right now.
Yeah.
And then we got him.
Yeah. So basically, that last 6 to 7 hours, I sat there. I knew when the cop turned my phone off, I knew I had 30% battery left. And so I'd planned this whole schedule of what to do, how to figure out how to get to downtown, get a Greyhound bus, just from talking to people in the jail cell, and then get to one other city and then get a transfer over. I knew I had 30% of battery to let everyone know I was alive or functioning, and to get there. And so I walked out, I saw Cam and Pat, and the feeling that gave me, it was literally one of the greatest sensations I've ever felt. Got in the bandwagon, Shuey had just done a poo in a bag, and so I was like, yeah, mad. Smelled horrific, but I never felt a greater feeling in my life. And so now I'm at the point where I get a letter sent to my parents' house, so I had to tell the family a week ago. Normally I try and keep those things to myself, but told the family, and I'll get a court date in a couple of weeks. I have to come back to Florida whenever I get the date to call.
If you'll be still in America at the time?
I have no idea. I'll have to fly back if I'm not. Maybe I might still be here. If I am, when I find the date out, I'll make the arrangements or whatever. But yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Joel, what's the moral of the story?
It's a tough moral. I don't know what the moral of the story is. Things always work out for hands like houses, I think. We've talked about
CHBL.
Yeah, can't help bad luck really. We've had, we talked about earlier, we've had a lot of things go, they could be going terribly wrong, but the next day or somehow everything manages to work itself out. So we have some good luck or some good karma with us somewhere in the universe.
And the next day our show wasn't until 7 p.m. So we got there at 12:30. Had to
because I called Warped Tour saying, hey, this is going down. It's not as bad as it seems, but this is what's happening.
And then we've made the show, and it was a good show.
It was a great show.
We played to rock, and now we're here.
The funniest part of this whole story is that the day of, I asked Coops if he had any stories for the podcast. He goes, I'll think about it overnight and get back to you. So the next day he rocks up and says, Jason, I've got a story for you for your podcast, and this is it.
We were talking the night before. We were talking the night before. For another episode. We were talking about an episode that we might do, and then the next morning, I remember being like, I have to tell this to Jace. I have to tell him this story.
Oh,
because
yeah.
Coops has got a good one.
Well, there you go. That was that night in St. Pete's.
Fantastic. Thanks, Coops. Thanks, Cam. Thanks,
Love
Joel.
It. No
Love
problems,
Love
Jace.
it.
Thanks for having us.
Echemos abajo la estación de tren, 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 demoler, 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 echemos abajo la estación de tren, demoler, demoler la estación de tren, demoler, demoler la estación de tren. Ta 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 ya ya ya. Nos gusta volar estaciones de tren. Demoler, 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 demoler. Nos gusta volar estaciones de tren. Demoler, 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 demoler. Yeah 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 yeah. Demoler, 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 demoler. Ta 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 ya 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 ya. Ta 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 ya 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 ya. Echemos abajo la estación de tren. 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 Demoler, 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 demoler. Echemos abajo la estación de tren. Demoler, demoler la estación de tren. Demoler, demoler la estación de tren. Ta 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 ya ya ya. Nos gusta volar estaciones de tren. Demoler, 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 demoler. Nos gusta volar estaciones de tren. Demoler, 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 demoler. Yeah 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 yeah. 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 Demoler, 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 demoler. Ta 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 ya ya ya.